When working with image textures or images in general, we'll be dealing a lot with a special editor called the UV image editor. To access it, you can click in here in the editor selector and choose UV image editor from the list. In this editor, we can open and view images, we can create new images, we can paint on it, we can view render result, we can save images into different formats, etc. In terms of UV mapping, this editor will let you edit UV layouts and can overlay your UV layout on top of the texture that you want to use. Now, in terms of UV mapping and UV editing, we're going to discuss this in later videos. Right now, in this lesson, we're going to focus on essential stuffs when working with UV image editor. Another common way to access the UV image editor is not by changing the 3D view like this. Let me bring back the 3D view editor first. If you need to see both the 3D view and the UV image editors at the same time, we can drag this corner control at the top right and create a new area at the right side. Then change the editor type to UV image editor in here. Now I use this method a lot as originally my screen resolution and my monitor is very big. But when I'm doing screen recording like this, as I only use smaller area of my screen, the UI quickly gets too crowded. I figure that for most laptop computers which have smaller screens, this can be an issue also. So for these scenarios, I recommend you to use multiple screen layout to switch between 3D view and UV image editor. To do that, click the plus button in the screen layout section and name this one default.UV image. Don't give it a name which starts from a random letter, as Blender will sort this screen alphabetically, and we want this new screen preset positioned exactly after the default screen layout. Okay, now that we are in the new screen layout, change the 3D view editor to UV image editor. We can even remove the timeline editor down here by dragging this left bottom corner control down. Okay, to switch between the two screen layouts, we can easily use the screen switching shortcuts, and that will be Ctrl left arrow and Ctrl right arrow. If we press Ctrl left in the UV image editor, we are back in the default screen where we have our 3D view editor. We can see the word default up here. And if we are in this default screen layout, pressing Ctrl right arrow will take us to the default.UV image screen, where we can see the UV image editor. If somehow you don't like switching screen like this, you can also use the function keyboard shortcut. To access the UV image editor, simply hover your mouse on the area you want to switch and then press Shift F10. To access the 3D view again, you can press Shift F5. Personally, I prefer screen switching method for small screen size, like when I am in this video recording resolution. So you will see me doing screen switching a lot in future lessons. In the UV image editor, we can see a pull-down list in here which says View. This is the Mode button. A quick explanation of what these modes can do. View is used when we need to see images. Paint is used if we want to draw or paint on the image. And Mask is for creating vector shapes to be used in Video Compositor. We're going to focus only on View mode in this lesson and Paint mode on later lessons. Now, changing mode will not only alter the header down here, but also the tool shelf in this editor. So, yes, just like the 3D view editor, UV image editor also have a tool shelf and a properties panel. Press T to show or hide the tool shelf, and press N to show or hide the properties panel. The shortcuts are identical with the 3D view editor, so you should remember them easily. Notice in view mode, the tool shelf displays this set of tools, while in paint mode we get these brush tools like this. To open existing image, we can click this open button in here. File browser editor will open up, and in here we can just browse for the folder we want to access. If you want to see the thumbnail of the images, we can click this button up here. select the file, and then click the Open Image button up here. Now we can see the image in our UV image editor. To open another image, we can click this folder icon, and then just browse and select another image. Click the Open Image button. So currently, we have two images in the scene or in the memory, although we are not using them for anything particular. If we need to switch between these images, we can click on the Image List button in here. Blender will display all opened images in the memory in this list. If we have like hundreds of images opened in Blender, we can quickly overwhelmed by them. This is where the search box up here come in handy. Just type the word or part of the word of the file's name you want to target, and Blender will filter them in this list. Select the image you want, and UV Image Editor will show the image. Beside opening, we can also create new blank image in Blender. To do that, we can click this plus button in here. Blender will prompt us with this new image window. In here, we can name the image, change its size, give it a base color, make it support alpha transparency or not, have it fill out with default textures, which usually useful for testing texel or UV mapping size. And the last one, whether to have ordinary 8-bit per channel or 32-bit per channel. Let's name the image red and change the color to red, just for example, and then hit the OK button. We now have a new image filled out with basic red color. After we have some images that we can view, we can start discussing on how to navigate the UV image editor. Basically, the navigation is almost identical with the 3D view editor, except for viewport rotation, as UV image editor is a 2D editor. To pan around the view, we can use the Shift middle mouse button, or just simply using middle mouse button. To zoom in and out, we can use the mouse scroll wheel, or by pressing Ctrl and middle mouse button. If we pan or zoom out too far and we are kind of lost, to go back to the default view, we can press the Home key. Okay, now we already know how to open and create images in the UV image editor, but how can we close them? You might be thinking that this X button will close the image. Well, the answer is yes and no. Pressing this X button will only close the image from the viewer, but it will not clear the image from the scene or from the memory. That is why if we click on this image list, the image still exists in the list. To remove the image completely, we need to make the image zero user, meaning the image is not used by any object in the scene. To do that, we can hold Shift and then click on this X button. Notice if we open the image list again, this image has this 0 number before the name. If we save the Blender file, then close Blender and reopen it again, this image will get purged. The opposite method of making these images zero user is to assign them fake user. The concept is the same with fake user in Material, so I won't discuss this again in detail. Basically, if you click this F button, we set a fake user to this image. We can see the letter F in front of the name in the image list. This way, this image will not be removed if you save your Blender file and reopen it again in later time. But there is something very important here to remember. Blender is a 3D software, and by default will only save 3D related data inside its file structure. Anything to do with 2D images will only be saved as a pointer to the actual image. So if you don't save your file to an actual external image file, your image will be lost forever. Again, this is for images that you create directly in Blender, not the ones that you open in Blender because they are actually already exist outside Blender. For example, this red image we created before. If we select it, go to Paint mode, and make some basic random strokes like this, the image menu down here will have this asterisk symbol, indicating that there are changes in the image data, but it is not saved yet. If you simply save the file up here, you save the 3D scene data into a .blend format, But this image that you paint will be gone forever if you close Blender. To save the file to external image file, you need to select this image menu and then save as image. Then we can specify the format in here. Give it a name up here and then click the Save as Image button up here. This is the best method to save your image. Why? Because you can later edit the image further in image editing software like Photoshop or Krita, etc. Another method to save your image, although I wouldn't recommend it, is to embed the image inside the Blender file. So when you save the blend file, your image is stored inside it. Now remember that this is not the default behavior. If you want to do this, you need to pack the image. You can go to the image menu again and choose either pack image or pack as PNG. Mostly you want to pack as PNG because pack image is more suitable for non-standard 8-bit per channel images, such as high dynamic range 32-bit per channel images. You must be aware though, packing high dynamic range images will make the .blend file size very large. And one last thing, if you already saved the image as an external image file, such as this leaf image, you can only pack it with the pack image option in here, because the file already exists and has a specific format, so Blender can only pack it as is without changing its file format.